Hey everybody, welcome to the Improv Summit. I am Spencer, your host and guide for this Improv Summit. And today we have a wonderful guest. We have Karen. How are you doing today?
I am great, thank you.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us. I know the viewers and the listeners are dying to know all about your improv experience. So just go ahead and tell me a little bit about your improv background.
Okay, sure. So I started doing improv in 2008, and I immediately saw a lot of overlap there with one of my other hobbies, which was tabletop role play gaming.
Mm.
And as I started getting more into improv, I started thinking more about how I wanted to bring um, those teachings to my other hobby. So I started teaching with some other friends a series of workshops that we started calling Improv for Gamers. And those are really fun. And I've been teaching them at like conventions and at my friendly local game store, and I've done private workshops as well. And so that kind of expanded into doing a lot of teaching of different types of applied improv, corporate improv, and also just performance at local theaters. So that's what I've been doing. I've been performing a lot of different troupes off and on throughout the years and kind of teaching here and there. And it's been really fun, and it's been really, what would be the word? I forgot the word.
It's okay.
I should have improv one.
It's okay. It's pandemic. There's a lot of words that I'm forgetting in general.
Yeah. Fulfilling. Fulfilling was the word.
Great. Fulfilling, just like a slice of a pie, I guess.
Yes.
But in a whole different way.
Yeah.
Whole different kind of fulfilling. That's great. Improv for gamers. It's a very specific, like, niche or niche, depending on how you say it. That's great that you're able to kind of pick up on that and kind of find a market for that. Now it makes me think of what I'm good at that I can market as like an improv for, not for gamers. I don't know anything about gaming, so don't worry. I'm not gonna jump on your territory there.
Oh, I'm not the only game in town, and I'm very happy for that. I've really
Great.
enjoyed that is a conversation that people have been having for a while and continuing to have. So I just really enjoyed being able to actually teach the workshops, because I think that there's a lot of people that talk about improv, but you have to do it. You just have to, get out there and try something weird and really feel it to get those teachings.
I agree. I think there's a lot, and I'm actually going to jump around because this actually kind of can segue. I found a great segue into another question. There's a lot about improv that you can literally learn for daily life, like for any kind of career, whether it's, actors like to act, but also anyone else in general. So what are some of the elements or certain aspects of improv that you find can be useful for everyday life, or for corporate, or for Wall Street, or for the movie theater, or for whatever, any career that someone chooses to take?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I do teach a class right now currently for Berkeley Improv Theater that's called Improv for Real Life. And it is a wonderful series.
Great.
And it is similar to kind of what you might get in like a corporate improv workshop, where we play the games and the exercises that improvisers would play to become better performers, but we look at those and see they're practicing the same skills that we can use as to be better humans. They're practicing listening, they're practicing collaboration, they're practicing just having confidence in yourself, but also earning trust from others and being very supportive. And so there's just so much like good feel vibes that can come out of just doing improv that can carry into any other skill.
I love that. And one of the big topics of conversation that's been coming up in a lot of these summits is the idea of listening. And so I keep coining this term, which I'm sure someone else has coined it in improv, heightened listening. Improv gives you more of like a heightened sense of listening. And again, here's what I'm going to ask is there's those people who are like, I don't need improv. I'm a good listener already. What would you say to someone who thinks that they're a good listener, but in general, maybe someone is a good listener. So maybe they do listen, but what makes improv listening different or in a way heightened than a general listener?
Somebody who says I'm a good listener, that's great. I would love to dump on them all of my issues. I think sometimes when someone says I'm a really good listener, that sounds like I give really good free therapy. Like that's a skill, and like, God bless you for doing it.
Right.
But listening in improv, I feel is really more, we say listening, but it's paying attention. and it's paying attention in order to be able to do something. We're actively listening because we want to wait for when we can come in and help.
Mm.
We're listening and trying to memorize too. It is a little bit of a memory game. We're listening to make sure that we don't forget any of the offers that are coming in, the names that are being given. We want to keep the scene really tight and focus on what we're given, not keep coming up with more and more stuff. The scenes are really good when they're really focused. And you've got the one weird thing and you just play off of that. So you want to be listening so that you're paying attention, you're remembering those things rather than trying to pull in more stuff as you run out of ideas. And you want to listen when you're on the sides, you want to listen to be like, do they need a walk-on character? If not, then no. So it's not just like wait for my turn, but like what does the scene need right now? Does it need me? Does it need somebody to edit the scene? Because that's also very important. And if you're doing a format where the people on stage can't edit themselves, you are, their parachute on the side, and you are watching to see when would be a good button, when would be like a really fun beat to just cut this on, or are they dying right now and I got to go help them because this scene is just no good anymore. So there's lots of reasons why you would want to end a scene. And so you're listening for all of those things in with the idea of like, how can I make this scene better that's happening right now? Either that I am actively in or that I am watching unfold.
Yeah, it's wild because improv is a sport. It's a team sport, like quite literally. Because again, there's always this idea of, oh, I'm not in the scene, I can just hang out and chill. Like I don't have to worry about anything. Which yes and no. I mean, sure, you're not in the scene, but again, like you said, there's so much else that I should be doing when I'm not in the scene. I should be, again, listening, paying attention to see if I need to go in and do something, or what is the game that's being played? When can I edit? When can I, they just called for somebody else. They literally like, Mom, get in here. And so who I need to be listening for that to jump in or whatever the case is. So it is great because there is so much that it's like, and I also learned as someone who was very much a sideline player a while ago when I was first learning, I'm so left-brained and analytical that I thrive in the sidelines because I thrive in the edits. I thrive in the figuring out callback moments that I can bring back. All that stuff.
Right. Yeah, listening for that too.
That's what my brain does. But I also have learned that I'm not just casually like leaning against the wall, just waiting for the next scene. That stuff is what my brain is doing when I'm in the back line, is literally just thinking about all those things. And great, I can play that way. And again, there's people that are much better at doing the scenic stuff and being in the 2-player scenes, and they can just like run through them real quick. And maybe they're not the greatest editor or the greatest, walk-on roles, but that's what a team is for. You have everyone who has these strengths in scenics, people who are strengths with the edits and the callbacks and the walk-ons and all this stuff. So it makes for that team sport. So that being said, this is a complete irrelevant segue, but the question is, what drew you to improv in the first place? What drew you to improv and what kept you going in improv?
I'm going to be real honest. I took an improv class because I needed to get I needed an excuse to get out of the house. I had just moved back to Oakland after having moved away for some time. I didn't really have a lot of friends here. I wanted to meet people. I was sad and was like, I need to get out of my apartment. Otherwise, I have no reason to leave. So that's why I did it. And it was the best decision that I've ever made in my life. I made such amazing friends because it is such a team effort, and I think that we forget about that sometimes in improv. Is it is a team. You're not supposed to be perfect on stage yourself. You are supposed to help other people and trust that they're going to help you, and then everyone's going to look awesome. So I made some amazing friends who I'm still very close with, and still have some troops that we're active in over a decade later. And I stuck with it for that, for the social scene. I stuck with it because I was enjoying, again, as I said, when I was like, oh, this is so much like tabletop roleplay gaming. And as I started getting into LARPing, I was like, oh, this is going to be really helpful for me. I want to keep doing these classes and keep performing and just keep having fun with this, because it's a similar hobby. I'm getting a lot of the same enjoyment out of it, and it's making me better at both.
Great. Yeah, and and I look like I'm the biggest nerd, but I don't like LARP or like play D&D or anything, but
Yeah.
I've heard from a lot of people who, started doing D&D or LARPing. They're like, I'll take an improv class because everyone said I should take an improv class, yada yada, blah blah blah,
Hmm.
the typical story. And they're like, wow, I didn't realize how much I was already improvising
Right.
before I took an improv class, and improv just helped me learn how to become a better improviser,
Hmm.
which is what's fascinating. And I was in the same boat where I was like, I need to put this on my resume. I'll just take a class. And then someone was like, you're gonna catch the bug. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not gonna improvise. And then here I am, like I've done the Second City program in Hollywood, Second City Hollywood, IO West, UCB, and comedy sports, and I'm taking classes at Impro right now. So like I've run
Hmm.
the gamut for the most part, and I never thought I would from that first time. But it
Hmm.
is this weird, like, because and this is another thing is I took a couple classes and I was like, I'm not a good improviser. I can't do this. It's not working for me. But once I kept doing it, things started to click, and it was like one thing clicked at a time. I finally was like, oh, I thrive on the sidelines, and in the back line, but getting on the scene, that's less pressure. I'm in the scene. I have nothing to worry about other than just being with my scene partner and doing a scene. I don't have to worry about
Hmm.
editing. I don't have to worry about anything else other than what's happening in the moment.
Right.
So that was the first click. And then the next click was like, I can go on stage without an idea and just make a strong choice, whether it's a vocal choice or a physical choice, just making a choice. It doesn't matter if I have an idea or not. I'll figure it out. That's what improv is.
Hmm.
And so once I
Yeah.
started,
Well, and your troop mates will back you up. Your
yeah,
teammates are going to back you up, so you don't have to have the whole idea.
absolutely. And so it's great because I was like, once I started to piece these together, which again, it took me like a year to figure some of these things out or
Oh
longer.
yeah.
Once
The
I think
first year
even
is
like,
rough.
yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Like I
It's
think I took
bad.
my first class in 2016, and
Mm.
this year in like January of 2020, when I was doing an improv audition, I was like, wait a second. I can just go out and make a big physical choice. It took me 4 years to figure out I could just go on stage and just make a choice without having to like think about what I'm going to do when I go out there,
Right. Well, I
which
still
is
take classes whenever I get the opportunity to, because improv is a muscle that you always need to stretch.
mhm,
And I love kind of going back and taking those like fundamental to scene work classes just to remind myself of the basics again, because there was a time where I was teaching more than I was performing,
mhm,
and I was performing, but I wasn't necessarily like taking classes either. And so I started feeling like I'm getting ahead of myself right now. Like I love teaching. I was coaching a troupe, and they were lovely, and I was, trying to give my best, but I was also like, I'm not doing anything fresh right now. So like,
mhm.
I don't want to be, those who can't teach. I don't want to
Right,
can't.
right.
I want to
Well,
can.
right. And even then I had recently I took a Herald course.
Hmm.
And I had done the iOS program, so I knew how the Herald works. I know the structure of a Herald. And I went to take this class, and on the first day, they were like, talk about your improv background and this and that and the other. And I was like, well, I've done iOS. And the teacher goes, this is a Herald class, right? And I was like, yes. And I want to come in fresh. I want to take what I've learned, kind of set
Hmm.
it aside, and come back in as if I've never done it before.
Right.
And it was like, great. And that's what I've learned is like, even then, it's like I'm challenging myself by taking like a Jane Austen improv class right now. But
Ooh.
also, yeah, it's super fun. I don't know much about Jane Austen, but it's been a blast. But it's one of those things where it's like, even like going back to like taking a 101 class. I would love to take a 101 class again because the
Hmm.
stakes are so low, the pressure is not there, but it also retrains my brain to be like, hey, what are the fundamentals of improv? Like,
Right.
what are the things that I'm forgetting? So it's what I love. But that being said, there's so many different types of improv all across the board. Do you have any specific like forms or styles or genres or any types of improv that are your favorites, or anything that you really feel like you're catered to? And then if you do like short form, are there any games in short form that you like to play, or any warm-ups that you like to really get you ready for a show?
Oh, that's so many questions.
Oh
So
yeah,
I
I mean,
started,
pick and choose.
yeah. So I started doing long form. That's what I started as, and that's what all my troops were long form troops. And then the last couple years, I joined a theater here in Oakland, and they wanted a house troupe that did short form, and
Hmm.
that was really different. I think the Bay Area is very into long form,
Uh-huh.
and
A lot of the West
in a
Coast, I
certain
think, is
way.
into long form.
Yeah, and they're great at it, and I love seeing it. So there's something very like, ooh, short form, but
Hmm.
it's hard. It's very hard, and
Hmm.
because there's no time, you don't really let things breathe uh, the same way that you would in a long form scene.
Hmm.
Um, so I really enjoy both. I've had a lot of fun doing short form and honing that whole side of it because it is very different. And you know, I have a lot of respect for people who do like the comedy sports, which is even I think like up to an 11 of doing short form where it's very competitive and you're really working the audience.
Hmm.
So that's just a different layer on top of
Yeah.
just trying to do a scene.
And it's funny that you mentioned comedy sports because I did the comedy sports LA program, but
Hmm.
I also did long form uh, before I did short form. And then when I start, because I think I did all of Second City and IO, or I was in grad review at Second City and I'd done IO before I even jumped into a class of comedy sports. And when I started short form, I literally went, wow, my brain gets this. My brain gets short form because it is my brain analyzing, like, okay, I've got 3 minutes. I've got to do this. I've also got to make sure I'm supporting the rest of my team. I got to make sure that, it's like this kind of a game and then there's this kind of a game. And I'm good at this type, but I'm not so great at this type. And so I want to excel. And so it was like piecing everything together that my brain went, oh, I wish I had done short form before I did long form because short form has helped me learn that if I can tell a story in 2 minutes, I got plenty of time to tell it in 5 or 6 minutes.
Right.
So I wish I had, especially with my brain, had known about short form more than before I knew about long form. It just was what it
Hmm.
was, but it
Well,
would have been.
yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because the performance classes that I've been teaching here in Oakland started with teaching for short form because again, it was kind of teaching, you know, what the house troupe was
Mhm.
showing, um, and then only moving into long form kind of when if you formed a troupe and went on to troupe coaching. But
For sure.
I think short form is very hard to do to start. It's like fun to do if you're okay with it being very sloppy and messy, because
Hmm.
there is a level of timing and a level of always being on and always listening and being very sharp that I think is really hard when you're first getting started and you're still figuring it all out.
Hmm.
So, you know, we teach I think I'm trying to think now, like harkening back to the curriculum. You know, it's a mix of like, you know, we practice all these skills and now we're gonna practice them in some short form games. But I don't think the short form games always work because it's like, well, you're still working out timing. You know, you're
Right.
still working out all of these things. So like again, they're really great to practice. But I think it's good to have a mix of just doing some scenes
Hmm.
and you know, not worrying about a time limit or an objective to them.
Yeah, I think there's definitely you can transfer those skills from short form to long form, and then of course there's some long form stuff that can be adapted for short form, which is great. Which is why exploring all different kinds of improv is really helpful. Especially, I know there are people that are like, I didn't really like improv. I took this one class and I didn't get it. I didn't like it, and
Mm,
it's like
yeah.
if you well maybe try a different school or a different philosophy or a different type of. If you don't like short form, try long form. If you don't like long form, try short form. It feels like people want to give up because they dip their toe in it and they're like, I didn't like it. But it's like it's such a vast variety of what types of improv is offered. Like
Hmm.
I realized the first improv class I ever took was a musical improv class. I had no
Oh,
experience in
yikes.
improv. And well, that's the thing is I was like, oh, I
That's
have a degree.
tough.
It was really tough, but I was like, I have a degree in music. I think I'll understand this. And I understood the structure of musical improv. I didn't quite understand improv as much because I hadn't taken improv, but I
Yeah.
understood the musical aspect and I can sing pretty well. So the teacher was like, oh, let's work on your improv because your musicality is good. I don't have to worry about the musicality with you. And so then when I went to do the basics of improv, I started to be able to pick up on the musical improv and I was like, oh, I thrive in musical improv. This is
Hmm.
where I belong. And I find musical improv to be easier than regular improv because I can rely on my voice to kind of sell. If I don't feel like my scenes is great, I'm like, oh, my voice is going to sell the whole scene. That's what matters. Versus an
Right.
improv scene that doesn't have music, where I'm like, I'm relying on the things that are coming out of my mouth, the emotions that I'm making, the physicality that I'm doing. And so I think that that's what I want people to also know, is that if some kind of improv didn't work for you, it doesn't mean that another kind won't
Hmm.
also work for you. It might be that something works different. Anyway, on that note, since I've found that I thrive in musical improv, it's one of my favorites. As a teacher, as a performer, as a learner or a student yourself, were there any moments from scenes that you did or any classes that you taught that like stick out as like, I loved it when this happened, or I loved it when we did this scene? And again, it's hard because improv comes and goes. You don't remember what happens most of the time. But any of those moments that stick out for you, be great if you wanted to share.
I remember in one of the classes I taught actually, and it was maybe week one, maybe week two, but it was very, very early, and we were playing convergence, or some people call it mind meld. It's that word association game. We try to say the same
Mm-hmm.
word at the same time,
I love that game.
which is super fun. Yeah, we were playing it, and these two guys who did not know each other um, said the same word at the same time, and they were so excited that they hugged, and
Oh,
everybody
awesome.
cheered, and it was just like the most just like the most heartwarming and touching moment. And also, it was a very long word, so I could see them getting excited because they were both like irrigation, and like just were so excited. So
Not
that
even a
stuck with me
common
because they were
word.
just
That's
no, was not
yeah.
even a common word. I don't even know how they got to irrigation, but they both said it, and they were like best friends for the rest of the class,
That's
for
awesome.
another 2 months. So that was really, really darling, just as a way that improv makes memories, and just when you're having fun with these people, they're gonna stick around in your life.
Mm,
Um,
I love that.
I
Improv's about
definitely,
making. No, I was
sorry.
gonna say improv's about making memories, even though we forget most of what we made. I
Yeah,
love it. I love it.
yeah. I think it's really important what you said earlier about you might take a class and hate it. That's always a danger. And I encourage people, and I encourage my students at the end of a class, like you can stay on here, if you're having fun here and go through the levels. If this wasn't your jam, we live in the Bay Area, like you can shop around. It's okay to
Hmm.
shop around. Maybe there is another theater that has a different vibe, because every theater has a brand, of the type
Hmm.
of improv that they are teaching and promoting. And there are some that are, doing high speed, short form comedy. There are others that are doing very more dramatic, long form. There's some that are specifically in that like 9:30 anything goes BYOB type of shows,
Hmm.
and that's not everybody's jam either. And then there are ones that are a little bit more holistic. There's a great
Hmm.
theater in the Bay Area called Leela that is founded by people who have degrees in drama therapy, and they bring in a lot of very interesting, just like connections and really strong types of scenes, and that's their brand.
Hmm.
So I think it's really important to recognize that there's not one true way of improv. You got to find what jives for you.
Hmm.
I've left theaters because I was not feeling it anymore. There were disagreements. Um, there can be a lot of drama
Hmm.
uh, in at improv theaters, and it's not worth it. It's just not worth your
Hmm.
time, unless
Yeah,
you
and
like that. If you miss high school drama from like the drama club,
yeah.
and
Oh
and
yeah.
you want that with in your adult life, you can find it.
Hmm. You just got to
If you
find the right
want
place.
it,
Yeah.
you just got to
But
find the right place.
yeah, and it's also wild because like I took iOS before I did any other improv, and I immediately clicked with the style and the philosophy. And then I went and did other programs, and like I love all the programs for what they are, but I was like, nothing feels like what IO felt like to me.
Hmm.
In a weird way, like I got lucky that the first place that I took classes was actually like probably the best style for my brain to
Hmm.
understand based on the philosophy. There are other programs that I've taken where I'm like, I'm not sure I vibe with this, but I want to finish out the program because maybe there is something that like, maybe it's like level 3 is when I finally start to really love something or whatever. Like
Right.
once I get through like the fundamentals type stuff and I start really jamming with their actual philosophy. But I've also learned very quickly, like, I take an improv. I love this other class that I took, and I'm not really feeling this. I think I'm out, you know. And I think that that's like, at least for me, I knew right away what worked and what didn't for me. Having taken a
Yeah.
class that I really loved, I was like, this feels great. I love this experience. I love this feeling. I love this community. And then going somewhere else, it's like, I don't feel the same thing that I did. So I think that that's also something where maybe people don't necessarily know right away, but I know that I knew right away what was working and what wasn't working.
You can also just not like the instructor, and sometimes that happens.
Bingo.
Um,
I've even said this, I think in another one, is that,
mhm.
you know, it's like with iOS, unfortunately they're no longer around, but some people are like, I don't like iOS style, but I love such and such as a teacher. It's true. These teachers are taught the philosophy, teaching style for whatever that place is, if it's iOS. But all these teachers are also incredible improvisers that go off and teach on their own at different places. And you now all of a sudden like what they're teaching because maybe you didn't click with like the iOS or whatever the philosophy is, but you click with that teacher. And I think that that's, and
Mhm.
also it's also vice versa. There are some places that I'm like, I love this place, but I don't click with that teacher. And that's okay. And that's again another one of those things where it's like there are teachers where I was like, I want to have you for every single class I ever take, but I know that you're like stuck with this one company because that's the style that you're used to teaching. And so
Mhm.
it it's a crapshoot in that way. But I do think that it is, like you said, like shopping around. But I learned pretty quickly like what I want to buy and what I don't want to buy.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I think it's important, when you're coming into improv, just remind yourself of that. It's okay to not not like not like it the first time. And try another theater, try a different instructor. Um, if there is something that you are enjoying, hone in on what that thing is and try to see where you can find it.
yeah, and like, is it like, are, and again with that honing in on the thing you like, is it that you like the style of what's being taught? Because then that might be it's just an instructor thing, or the way something's being, or is it like, I like hanging out with people, but I don't really like anything that they're teaching? Then it's like, well, maybe that's,
Yeah.
then it's like that's a question of like, maybe go somewhere else where you can hang out with people but learn something different.
Hmm.
I think that's also great. So that leads me to, sort of in a way, because everyone, is on different levels of improv, even if they literally the same two people have gone through the same programs, the same amount of time and everything. They're still on different levels of improv because everyone's improv experience is gonna be different. To you, what makes a good improviser? And
Oh
I know it's a loaded
God.
question too, but like a couple things that
um,
like kind of make that, a good improviser. We're like, oh, I won't lead. Just yeah. What makes a good improviser?
I'm thinking about shows that I've walked out over. I was like, that was so good. Like that inspires me. I want to do that. I want to do the improv like they just did. Um, is again thinking about improvisers that really listen and really play with just a couple of ideas. Um, so I like a lot of reincorporation. I like coming out with really strong relationships. Um, I I like improv that doesn't necessarily have to be funny. And certainly you should never try to be funny, obviously. And you can tell when an improviser is trying to be funny, and that never works. Never works.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I love seeing improvisers who really embrace the kind of play to lose, of just going in and being like, I'm going to make this character and you're all going to love him. I'm going to make this character suffer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm going to come in super low status. Or also, improvisers that are really coming in with very good support, of coming in with a line that's not just, I have a funny punchline and I wanted to pepper it in, but like, I have the best twist to add to what's happening right now, and then I will leave.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
I,
it's
I love
great.
watching things like that where people are just making kind of small but very pointed and powerful decisions.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that, again, it harkens back to the idea of, you said support a couple times in
Mm-hmm.
that answer, like the support, not only for what's going on in the scene, but just for your scene partners and for your team in general. It's like it's almost like I want to say that I would much rather play with an improviser who's not great, but understands that it's about a team, than an improviser who's really great that is like all about themselves. Uh,
Yes, you want to see that everybody's having fun,
mhm.
and you don't realize how important that is until you watch a troupe that you feel like is not gelling very well,
Mhm.
and not everybody is having fun, and
Yeah,
that sucks. You know
yeah,
that.
it's happened in classes too, I've noticed, is like
Mhm.
there's always like that like one person who's like, I'm here because I'm funny and I'm better than you and I want to do all this, and it's like then they start steamrolling
Oh God.
scenes, and then it's
Yeah.
like, well, I don't feel like I'm that great, I don't want to do this, and I'm like, I'll just let you do the scene, I'm just gonna stay in the back. And then it's like I'm losing out on my experience and my education and my opportunity to play and have fun. And so, I mean, luckily a lot of times it gets kind of called out pretty quickly, and either it gets adjusted or they get moved to a different class or to a different place entirely. Um, but I think that's another thing, is sometimes people come in with egos, and it's a matter of adjusting that ego. If someone's like, hey, you're steamrolling. Ah, I didn't realize that. Sorry, let me work on that. That is, I think, also acceptable, to be like, oh, I didn't realize that. I will work on that. Thank you for that note. Versus like, I'm not steamrolling. You guys just got to get out there more. That's a whole different
Oh yeah.
person. You act like that's
Yeah,
happened before.
that's no good. Oh yeah. I mean, I think that there's a lot of humility that you need to learn in that hard first year. The show,
Mhm.
your first graduation show that all of your friends came to, and that's going to be probably one of the worst shows that you'll ever do in your life.
And probably one of the only ones they'll actually come to, because then they're done.
Exactly, because it was so bad, and they're like, "I came for you, and I sat through this.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it again." And then, years later, you're like, "I'm so good now," and they're like, "No, polite, no."
Hmm.
Um, so I think it's interesting that you bring that up, because there is, we want to build confidence. And I think confidence is a great thing that comes out of improv, but it's more like, I am comfortable making a fool out of myself. I am confident that I can go out and do something scary and weird and it's going to be okay.
Hmm.
I'm comfortable having some humility. I'm comfortable owning up when things didn't work, and
Hmm.
why, and if it was my bad or not. So you have to also be just very comfortable, looking inward, and if a scene didn't work out, be like, was that on me? Did I drop, an offer that was very obvious? Was I kind of scripting in my head? Was I too into playing for a laugh? I heard the audience laugh, so now I'm just playing with them, and
Hmm.
I'm not playing with you anymore because I'm over here. So,
Yeah. Or was it even
you
just
need
an
to
off
be,
night? It happens.
yeah, yeah, and those have happened too. I've had some pretty bad ones myself.
Hmm.
So you want to be confident enough in yourself to trust yourself, of like, I'm going to survive all of this, and I'll be better, and my teammates are going to be better, and we're just all going to work on helping each other out, so that we're all still having fun up here.
Hmm.
Because if we're having fun, the audience is going to have fun. That's really what brings such great um, energy from an audience, is
Absolutely.
is them watching you all have a great time is
Hmm.
going to help.
I love that. And that actually kind of, see, this is like where I'm like, oh, my moderation. Leading into my next question, very
Hmm.
perfect segue. Um, because we have all these different types of improvisers, and this is like, I guess, like a more of a jam scenario, but it could be a class, or it could be just like a performance opportunity. You have an improv scene where you have someone who, this is their first time stepping onto a stage to do improv. They've never done it. This is their first time on stage. Then you have someone who's an expert improviser. An expert, I use the term loosely because, expert, it means a lot of different things. But an expert improviser who's been improvising 15, 20 years, maybe. They're no stranger to the improv world. What would you say is some advice for both improvisers, so that they both shine in this scene, where the expert improviser is giving support to this brand new improviser, and the brand new improviser feels like they're, one, giving that support to the same support to the expert improviser, but is also confident in making their choices, if that makes any sense. How do they both shine in this scene, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, I think that they should both really trust each other. One, the newbie it's going to be terrifying. It's super scary. So I would, let them know, like, your true, your scene partners are going to take care of you. So trust that they're going to take care of you. You're not out there alone. It's not the two of you, performing separately. The two of you are doing something together. And they're very excited to do that with you. Like, they want you to succeed. So trust that you have a safety net. And then maybe, to the person who's done it for a while, it's like, trust that this person knows a little bit of what they're doing. Like, they're going to come up with ideas that you never would have thought of, and they're going to be amazing because they weren't your ideas. I think sometimes you can get too into a groove, especially if you do the same format all the time. You can be really surprised by what somebody will bring, when you work with someone new. So I think also just like, trust that this person can take care of themselves to some extent because they're trying it out. So don't assume that just because somebody's brand new that that you have to run the whole scene.
I love that. I love that. And it's again, it goes back to, because I teach improv to kids, and I always say, everything you say is right. Everything you do
Yes.
is right. And again, I mean, this is for kids, so I don't have to like explain all of the no-nos in improv to them, or just no-nos in general of things you shouldn't do or say because they're kids. But in the general sense, everything you say or do is right, because I don't want them to judge what they're going to say. Well, she was talking about being in a box, and I didn't know if I should be in the box too, or if it's like, if you're in the box, great. If you're not in the box, great. Like that's what I love, especially with kids, especially teaching them at a young age to not judge themselves is really great. And it's like, if I could take that when I go into a scene and like, wait, hold on. I'm telling my kids not to judge themselves, and yet here I am judging my choice that I'm making in improv. Why do that? Like, I should just think, okay, I'm telling them not to judge themselves. Let me take my own advice in this way. And so it's great to know that. I think in general, for everyone to know, is that people who have been improvising for a while, in general, if they're a good team player, they know that someone who's relatively fresh to improv, they know, like, how they already know, they're already thinking, how can I support this player and how can I make them feel welcome?
Because that's going to be, honestly, it's going to be the easiest job, is you just let that new person come up with ideas and you support it. And you just yes and the hell out of everything that they're saying, and have fun with it.
Yeah.
And, again, like, make them the star. It's really easy.
And you may get a repeat improviser. They may come back because they had such a good time, or they may sign up for a class now because they're like, this was so much fun. I felt so supported. And so I think it's always that great feeling when someone's like, I co-host a jam as well on like Wednesdays. And one thing that I remember saying is, I wasn't hosting that day, and the hosts and I were texting, like, the other co-host, and he was like, what'd you think? And I was like, honestly, having come today, I just had so much fun, and I was just glad. I was like, glad I wasn't hosting because there was no pressure,
right.
But also, like, I just see how much fun everyone else is having, that I have fun just watching everyone else have fun. And everyone's coming in with all these different levels of experience, and it's just, for lack of a better word, it's just fun and exciting to see everyone just enjoying what they're doing. And I want to keep that. I don't want to take that away from people, the joy, by being like, well, you could have made this better choice, or it's like, no, all those choices were great. I had a good time. I laughed. Nothing felt weird to me. Everything felt right. So it's like, and again, it's like, I feel like I judge the hardest when I'm not in a scene. I'm like, well, if I was in this scene, I would have done this. And it's like, I wasn't in that scene. So why do I, like, it's not like I shouldn't care about what my idea was. I wasn't in the scene.
Oh man, when you first started improv, did you go to shows and just scrutinize them like you were a first year film student?
Well, I also had I have a master's in film. So that was very much
so
the case. Yeah.
It's hard sometimes. It took me a while to realize, like, I can just enjoy the show. Like, I really don't need to critique it. Like, not everything's a learning opportunity. But I definitely, in my first year, and like some of it is, and I encourage people, like, go watch shows, see what you enjoy, and like pick it apart afterwards. Like, what did you laugh at? What was the most satisfying thing that they did? keep those things in mind. But I definitely caught myself doing that first year film student thing where you show up and you're just like, oh, it's a Herald. I'm going to keep all of the beats in my mind. I'm tracking all
Uh-huh.
of it. If you mess
Yeah.
up, you're like, why?
Yeah. Oh, you started with an organic opening and all of a sudden you're doing a different kind of group game. Oh, wow. Interesting. It's an organic
Yeah,
group game.
that's funny.
Or like even like suggestions. It's like the suggestion is taco or whatever. And I'm like, oh, I got the perfect idea. It's like a sleepover and they're going to be having pizza rolls, like taco flavored pizza rolls. And they don't do it. And I'm like, "Ugh, my idea. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Like, I'll save that for, I'll save that for when I get that suggestion.
I'd say one thing that's really good learning from watching other shows is getting that instinctive feel when to end a scene, especially with those
Oh,
early
yeah.
shows, because you feel it in your body. You start feeling the like. I have been in shows where I'm in the audience and just going, cut the scene now, cut it now.
Uh-huh.
There's another beat, cut it now. And it was, it was not a great show. I still applauded very loudly because they did something really scary and they did it. So hooray.
Uh-huh.
I
Editing.
never hold my applause for anybody.
Sure. That editing is a big thing too, I've noticed, because I remember I think it was Holly Laurent at iOS. I keep talking about her because she's so great. That one thing she said was, I do that whole like backline like dance where I'm like, oh, do I go now? And she said the first time you feel that instinct is correct. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
like, so it's like the first time I want to edit is when I edit, because she's like, otherwise you wouldn't have the instinct to edit. And I was like, that's a good point, because I'm not sitting there at every line like I'm getting ready to edit as soon as it's like they're starting to heighten, we have the game, we have this idea, all this stuff, and it's like there's a funny line, the audience laughs, that's the edit. We can come back to it, it doesn't mean that we can never come back to it.
The give and take is really important, especially when you remind people you can always come back to that scene. You could absolutely pick right back up where you left off if you really want to revisit that scene, but like for now in this moment somebody cut your scene, so bye.
Yeah.
Get on the side. They had a good reason to do that. So, again, trust your team. You can always come back later.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like your team is like, I'm just going to cut you off in the middle of a sentence. Like, I mean, trust that. Yeah. I learned, trusting that when I get edited, it's because that was a good edit. Like, this is a good ending. I loved what you did at the end. I want to keep that as a good ending. And so I think that that's like something that people don't realize is like, we're not editing it because we're tired of hearing about it. We're editing it because it's great, and we want to come back to it, or like that was a good way for us to remember this scene.
Yeah, it might not get better than that.
Yeah,
that might have been it. That was the best point. So because when you miss that first beat, waiting for the next one, it just gets harder and harder every time.
Especially when the improvisers start looking around like, I was ready for this to end a minute ago and no one's cut us off yet, and so now we're just going to keep digging a deeper hole. But yeah, generally once you get the idea of what's happening, you don't need to keep doing it over and over and over and over and over, because eventually, and I think I've also noticed, like when the audience has like a big laugh and then the next one's like, I missed it, but then it's like a smaller laugh, and then it's like, okay, they're ready for it to end too.
Yeah, I mean, you can potentially do the comedy where you go so far it comes back around again, but it takes a long time to get there. And in improv, you do have like an economy of time. You only have so many minutes for your time on stage.
And speaking of economy of time, we're actually at the last question, the big question that I have. Not that we have time, but I just felt like it was a great segue, and now I'm explaining it, which means I've ruined the joke.
You're doing great. No, I love always explain the jokes. Explaining the joke will make it 25% funnier.
Great. I love that, especially to me, because then I start explaining my joke and then I start laughing at how funny it is to me. Great. So it was a funny joke. I loved it. And this is I call it the big question, because this is the reason why I wanted to do this improv summit. Is I get a lot of people, I'm an actor director, so I'm around a lot of actors, a lot of directors, a lot of writers, a lot of the entertainment industry kind of people. And a lot of them don't really feel like they want to do improv, or they're scared. And a lot of times it's their manager or their agent asks them to. And so they come to me and they say, hey, Spencer, where should I take improv? And to me, it feels like a loaded question, because there's so much that I want to know about before I tell them where to go. But if someone came up to you and just said, hey, where should I take improv? What is like a tip or some kind of advice or something that you would say to them to help guide them in the direction that they should go?
That's
I
tough.
know
I
it's a
mean,
loaded question.
it is, and also because we've kind of unlocked the world of online improv classes that makes so many schools accessible that didn't
Hmm.
used to be. So,
Absolutely.
when people ask me before, like where to take improv, and I would ask like, well, do you want to stay on the East Bay or do you want to go into the city? Are you in the South Bay? Because that's really going to limit you. And like,
Mm.
I have a couple of theaters in each one that I would 100% recommend you check out. But like, location is important. Now, location is not as important,
Right.
and that opens up a lot of things. But I would recommend, um, you know, go to a show first and see if that's the type of comedy that you like. See if that's the type of improv that you like. Again, because some theaters are vastly different.
Mhm.
Um, so if you have a couple different ones that you want to, that you can't decide on either because of timing or price or location, or for whatever reason, if one came highly recommended, it could be really helpful to check out a show first, from the house troupe of that theater or the training troops, so you can see what the end result is of people that have gone through all the levels. So like going and checking out a training troop show is pretty fun because you're kind of seeing like this is what we have been taught, like this is our final exam that we're doing. Uh, and that can give you a little bit of idea of like the brand and the
Mhm.
gist of it. If you walk into an improv theater knowing nothing about that theater, you're probably still going to be fine. Like it's probably going to be fine, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes you go in and you're like, this is not what I'm looking for. Also,
Mhm.
like going and looking at the training troops gives you a good idea of the demographic.
Mm. Mhm.
Um, Improv has a white guy problem. And
A lot of things do.
Yeah, a lot of things do. And unfortunately, improv as well. And if you go to, to watch a show and five white dudes come up on the stage, uh, you know, why? Like,
Mhm.
so you just want to think about, who do I want to play with? Because again, there are a lot of different types, and you don't want to find yourself in a type of improv that like really isn't your jam.
Mhm. That makes perfect sense, and especially if it's just five white guys in a five-person show.
Yeah. And also like improv sometimes can be really expensive, and I just want people to like get their money's worth and still have fun with it.
Mhm.
So and
And that's
that
another
so
thing,
yeah, so
is the accessibility of classes financially, which luckily there's a lot of schools that are doing scholarship programs, or when they're
yes.
in person is work study. And as someone who my whole life growing up as a white guy, even though I'm Greek Mediterranean and I have a disability, it's this whole like weird thing of like, should I apply for a scholarship? Should I not? Because yeah, I'm a white guy. I'm Greek, which I don't know many Greek improvisers at all, or anyone that's really Greek, but also I have a disability. Now I'm only half blind, so like, am I, am I fully like, should I take advantage? And so it's like one of those things where for a while I was like, should I submit, like, should I submit for these scholarship applications, or I don't have money, I can't afford to take all these classes. But then I realized, you know what, it doesn't hurt for me to explain like I have a disability, and I don't know anyone else that's like me on stage. And so I think that it's not, I gain nothing, or I don't, not gain nothing, I lose nothing by trying. And I think that
Right.
that's what I think I want people to know, especially people who are in marginalized communities, is if a scholarship is being offered, it doesn't hurt to just submit. Like it really,
Also just ask. If
yeah,
you don't see a scholarship on their website, just email and ask if they have any type of scholarship programs, because they should.
yeah,
They
that's
absolutely should. And if it's not on their website, you're gonna make one on their website now for you.
right.
Uh,
And that's a great point.
so especially if you are looking for some type of, if you want to learn the trade a little, if you want to trade classes essentially for working front of house, a lot of theaters do that too. They have work programs, and if it's not on their website, you can call and ask. And normally they'll be like, oh yeah, that's a great idea, of course we can work
Mhm.
something out.
Yeah, it's great. And that's how I kind of stumbled upon one of the programs that I did. Was I was like, hey, I've been doing work study here, I've been doing work study there, do you guys offer anything like that? And they're like, we don't. And I ended up getting like hired, and then and then I ended, so it like became like this whole thing where like it actually worked out, but I would
Hmm.
have never even thought of going there had I not just asked that simple question, and it worked itself out. And so I think that that's the big thing is like, don't hesitate to ask, or
Right.
just submit. If it says like, you know, even sometimes it's like there are scholarships where it's like seeking this group or this group or this group, and I'm like, would you consider disability? It's not written on there. And they're like, oh yeah, we just couldn't list everything, like we just, because there are so many different
Sometimes that
types.
one's left out.
Mhm.
I'm surprised sometimes how people will focus on only one section of marginalized groups and forget about disabled people.
Yeah,
Um,
and so it's like a big thing, which is
yeah.
like, again, it's like, I was glad I asked, because they're like, oh yeah, we just are writing, you know. And then it becomes this thing where like it's almost better to just say, if you feel you are representative of a marginalized community, this scholarship is for you, instead of listing specific
Yeah, as soon as you start
types.
trying to make a list, you're leaving people out.
Hmm.
So yeah,
And people know if
it's
they're in a
it's
marginalized community, they know.
yeah, you know.
So yeah, anyway, enough of the heavy stuff.
Yeah.
I think this is great. Do you have anything else you want to add to this conversation? Because that's pretty much all we've got here. um,
I don't know. I think, for people that are interested in improv, I would just encourage you to try it out. It's going to be scary. It's going to be messy. But hopefully it's going to be fun, because if you are doing it with other people that are also scared, you're gonna form bonds. And again, like, I really try to drive home the idea of, like, you have to earn people's trust. You have to be worthy of that, and you have to trust other people. So it's really, it is a team sport, and like we need to keep reminding people of that.
mhm.
And then you'll have fun.
And even then,
So
going
yeah.
off of that, I remember Second City Hollywood, when I did that program, I had done IO, so I was able to skip improv 1, 2, and 3, because I had already
Hmm.
not mastered, I say mastered those skills, but I had already done
Yeah.
similar classes. And so I jumped into Conservatory 1. And in that class, it was a group of like 7 or 8 people that had been through improv 1, 2, and 3 together, and they just kept taking that same class. And then I jumped in, and I was
Hmm.
like this like new guy, and it was like, who's this guy? He's not been with us this whole time. But
Oh,
then I jumped in. Well, I mean, it was like for like the first 20 minutes, and then it was like, all right, welcome to the group. And so
yeah.
like once
That's
once
how it
once
should
they
be.
yeah, so once like they got to know who I was like, I'm here for like for good. They're like, okay, great. But then we did con 1, con 2, con 3, con 4, and con 5 together. And then grad review is a whole different story, because you get directors choose who they want in their shows, so you get split up anyways.
Hmm.
But for con 1 through 5, we all just kind of did it together, and it became like this thing where like one person was like, I have to work on Tuesday nights now, I can't do it. We're like, no, we're gonna miss you. It was like this whole like, it was a bummer to like miss someone for 7 weeks. And so that's what I
Hmm.
think is great. Like, going in, I was like, I don't know any of these people, but 20 minutes into the first class, I was like, all right, we're all best friends now. And so it was great, because we had that experience together. And I think that that's what really got me through the program, was the same people that I got to see and like jam with and hang out with and have fun with. And like I was like, you're funny, you're funny, you're funny, I'm funny, we're all funny, but also that doesn't matter, because we all just love each other. And so I think that that's,
You get that very summer camp vibe
yeah.
of, you're with these people that are strangers for a short amount of time, but in a very unique environment, with like very unique new experiences. And you form really strong bonds the same way that you do with like your camp friends.
Hmm.
So I think, again, like, you can keep those friends for years and years, or just not, and have that memory of that one crazy semester of
Hmm.
improv
Yeah,
classes.
exactly. Well, thank you for sharing. Did you have anything you wanted to like pitch or plug or anything like that?
I mean, I'll pitch myself. My name is
Sure.
Karen Twelves. I teach improv. I like doing applied improv. I teach corporate improv. I also, do improv for gamers. So if you're interested in talking about like tabletop role play gaming and LARPing and GMing, I would love to talk to people about that and teach them improv. I wrote a book about 2 years ago where I basically packaged together a lot of the exercises that we teach in the workshops and talked about, here is the gaming skill. You practice it in this improv game,
Mm,
and made
great.
made a little book of that. It's called Improv for Gamers. I recommend people check it out, if only because it's a lot cheaper than a class. And that's kind of why I made a book. You know, I am not an author of improv, and I'm not trying to tell people like here's the true way of improv, because I know where I got my training from. So
Right.
I'm not a classically trained improviser, but I'm trying to just share what I learned. And because I know that improv is expensive, and I was teaching at a lot of gaming conventions, and gaming conventions are expensive too. I just really wanted to make it more accessible, that people could pick up a game with easy to read instructions that explains exactly why it's useful for them. They can play it, you know, with their friends online, or, you know, back in the good old days in their living room, and do it for 5-10 minutes. You don't have to take an 8-week class, or, you know, a weekend 4-hour intensive. You can just dip your toe in this and take little baby steps, and that's totally fine too.
I love it. And also, if you're interested in any of this stuff, the links and all the information is down in the YouTube comments. I'm doing this now because I kept doing my little typey thing, and I have really not great object work, so I stopped. So I'm just now pointing to the YouTube thing now, because that makes the YouTube thing, you know, where all the comments and all the descriptions are. So take a look at all of that.
Just smash that like, subscribe button.
Yeah, for this improv summit, you know, it's going to be the biggest channel of all time. Yeah. So great. So we've been talking a lot about improv. I just want to know, do you want to do an improv scene before we head out?
We could do a scene. I was thinking about one of the things that I miss the most, that I haven't figured out a way that works out well online. Some of my favorite exercises are songs. Are the improv chanting games, because there's so much lag and latency that you can't do anything like quite at the exact same time right now. So I was thinking about that. I was trying to figure out if we could sing a song. I don't know if we could make it work. But I'll ask you this. Have you ever played Franklin Institute?
You know, it's so funny that you say this, because this is
I'm so excited because I learned this from somebody who learned it from somebody else, and like no one else knows it over here. Yeah. So anytime someone's heard of it, I'm so delighted.
So we were having a happy hour for the class that I was taking, and the one guy in the class, he goes, have you guys ever heard of this thing called Franklin Institute? And I'm like, what? And so he starts doing it with like the clapping and all this stuff. And then someone couldn't hear. They're like, did he join a sorority? What's going on? And I was like, no, it's some like game or something. And he's like, I'm not trying to make you guys play it. I just want to tell you it exists. And he's like, I learned it from someone who learned it from someone. And I was like, what is going on with this? So I want to play it.
Well, I don't know. It might be different. So I learned it as a song. And I love it because you get to break a lot of the rules of improv, where nothing has to make any sense or have any continuity to what has been said before. So I love it for that game of like, now we play the break all the rules game.
Yeah.
But it's a singing game, so there's like a chorus that goes, at least how I've learned it. And I also love how games mutate and change as they, you know, cross over the country and swirl around. It goes, Franklin Institute, it's so full of secrets. Franklin Institute, let's hear those secrets now.
Yeah, and that's what it is.
Yeah, and then people just make stuff up to that meter, more or less, about what's at Franklin Institute, and none of it has to make any sense or build on the one before, or have any type of continuity. It's just weird facts about this place called Franklin Institute.
Yeah, and who knows what Franklin Institute has.
So I love it. I don't know if we want to try singing the chorus at the same time, or maybe just trade off. Maybe we just I can start again with the chorus and add my verse, and then you can kind of sing your chorus and your verse, and then you know, I'll still be like, you know,
we could jam
rooting you on over here, but I won't be talking you over.
Or do we just go?
No.
Oh, okay.
You just make up facts.
All right, let's do
about
it.
Franklin Institute.
So I have to hear that chorus a couple times, but
that's okay. That's the best part about this game, is you just get it wrong and keep going. So Franklin Institute, it's so full of secrets. Franklin Institute, let's hear those secrets now. So here's my secret. In the hallway, there's a big, deep, dark hole. If you enter it, you probably won't come out. Franklin Institute.
It is full of secrets. Franklin Institute, let's hear those secrets now. In the kitchen, there is a big bucket, and inside that bucket, there's lots of body parts.
Franklin Institute. It's so full of secrets. Franklin Institute. Let's hear the secrets now. Yeah, it's hard to sing at the same time because I hear your lag and then I slow down.
Yeah.
But that's the game. And now that song will be stuck in your head for about 48 hours, is what I've discovered. I taught it to some friends at a kind of gaming weekend away. And it was wonderful because then it just slowly spread throughout like the 50 people that were kind of at this whole thing for a weekend. And I loved it because I would hear people singing it and I hadn't started it. And I was like, yes, this awesome. Weird thing is spreading.
I want to challenge us to do it one more time, and we'll do it individually because of the lag. But I think we should do it where we each go twice, maybe. But we do like a letter of the alphabet, and we go in order. So it's like if we start with D, you'd start with D. I would do E, F, and G, and then something within that, like whatever you find or wherever you are, has to start with.
Got it. So that letter, like will
combining two games, I guess.
Nice. I love it. Yeah, I love mashing stuff up. Yeah. So that letter, however it influences it. Yeah, what letter should we start on?
Let me get a randomized letter. How about that? Let me.
Oh, fancy.
Randomized letter generator. I'm sure that exists because everything. Yeah, look, random letter generator. Here we go. Number of letters. Generate random letter. It is letter is. Takes a while to load a random letter.
That's a website.
N. So we're gonna get N, O, P, and Q.
All right. I can start.
Yours will you just have to have the letter N, and then I'll do the letter O, and then you'll do a P, and then I'll do a Q.
Cool. So I'll sing the chorus, and then I'll do my verse, and then I'll leave it to you to sing the chorus and verse.
It'll be fun. Let's see what happens.
I don't have a plan. I'm gonna start singing though. Franklin Institute, it's so full of secrets. Franklin Institute, let's hear those secrets now. Under the basketball court, there are lots of nerds, not actual people, but boxes of the candy.
Nice. Franklin Institute, it is full of secrets. Franklin Institute, let's hear those secrets now. In the other room, because it's
yeah, I got it.
There's a lot of boxes, and in those boxes there are severed heads. I like these body parts, I guess.
They go really creepy. It's fine. Yeah. Franklin Institute, it's so full of secrets. Franklin Institute, let's hear those secrets now. In the science class, they have lots of dinosaur bones, and one of them is one of those dinosaurs that starts with a P, but it's silent.
Nice.
Couldn't think of it. That was my idea, but I couldn't think of the word.
Pterodactyl doesn't fit in the meter. It's all good. Franklin Institute is so full of secrets. Franklin Institute, let's hear those secrets now. In the bathroom, there is a toilet, and in that toilet, it's stopped by a quail.
Perfect.
Yeah.
We did it.
That was fun. I love that game now. It's so fun.
I've really missed the singing games and chanting games because I can't. Yeah. The lag
doesn't work. Yeah, it doesn't work. Even if it's a solo with an accompanist, it still doesn't work.
Yeah.
They're both trying to compete for Zoom attention. So anything else you want to say? That was fun.
That was fun. Thanks for indulging me in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for teaching it to me.
Yeah. I love improv. I think it's really made me a better person in a lot of ways, but I'm going to keep doing it because I want to just keep getting better. And also, like I said, it's really a muscle that you just have to keep working out. Even if you're not performing, you can still take classes. You can still just practice active listening, and you'll get a lot out of that as a human.
And if you want to do your own musical improv, I've learned that you can just give yourself a suggestion, come up with ideas of relevant vocabulary, pick a song, and put on a random like instrumental track and sing to it.
Oh yeah, that'd be fun.
And for hip hop improv, which I will say rap is not my strongest skill as far as rhyming. Rhyming is not my strong suit, which is fine. But I have a little rhyming dictionary. So let me find words that rhyme. Find a couple words a day that rhyme, and it'll help me bank the knowledge for later.
Yeah.
So it's great. There's always ways to do improv, even if you can't afford it. You can always find ways to do improv.
Yes, for sure.
Great. Well, thanks so much for joining me, Karen, on this Improv Summit, and everyone watching and listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and don't forget to check out all the information down there in the comments, or the description in the comments, wherever it is. YouTube. I'm
in the thing down there. It's down there.
Yeah, down in the thing, not in the typing thing that I usually do, but down there. Bye. Take care.
Bye.